Have you ever found yourself sort of nodding along to an argument, maybe one you hadn't fully considered? Or, felt that irresistible urge to buy something just because it said limited stock? What if your daily choices, I mean everything, from the news you trust to the stuff you purchase, are being subtly influenced by forces you barely even perceive? Today, we're doing a deep dive into the psychology of persuasion, how your mind is influenced daily. Our mission here is to really unpack the core psychological models, how persuasion actually works. We'll explore the surprisingly simple, yet really powerful tactics that are constantly at play around you. And most importantly, we want to equip you with the knowledge to navigate this ever-present influence much more consciously and critically.
Yeah, and it's crucial because persuasion isn't just about, big sales pitches or political rallies we might see on TV. Not at all. It's really fundamental. It's part of human interaction, and it profoundly impacts our health decisions, our mental state, even the choices we make every single day. So we'll explore not just how we're influenced, but maybe more importantly, why it matters, and how you can engage with these forces in a way that actually empowers you.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So at the heart of how our minds are influenced, there's this foundational idea, right? The elaboration likelihood model.
That's right, the ELM. Developed by Richard Petty and John Cacioppo. And yeah, you can basically think of it as our brains having two main routes for processing persuasive messages.
Two routes, like a fast lane and a slow lane for information, something like that.
Exactly, that's a great way to put it. What's fascinating here is how the ELM explains that when you encounter any kind of communication, could be an ad, a news article, even just a conversation, you process it with varying levels of thought or elaboration. This mental effort, it can range from really deep critical thinking.
The slow lane.
Right, to barely any thought at all.
The fast lane.
Pretty much. And this elaboration continuum, as they call it, determines which of the two major routes to persuasion you'll take.
Okay, so let's talk about the first way. The slow lane, what did Petty and Cacioppo call it? The central route.
Correct. The central route.
Right.
What happens when our brains take this path?
Well, under the central route, persuasion comes from you carefully and thoughtfully considering the actual facts, the logical arguments being presented.
So you're really digging in. You are. You're digesting the message, you're picking it apart, connecting it to what you already know. You're doing the mental heavy lifting, asking yourself, does this make sense? Is this actually true for me? And the key thing is, attitudes formed this way tend to stick around for a long time.
Okay.
They're harder to change later, and they strongly predict your future behavior.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you're, say, seriously researching a new car, you're comparing fuel efficiency, safety ratings, warranties, reading reviews.
You're doing your homework.
Exactly. You're engaging the central route. You're evaluating the merits of the argument for each car. And interestingly, studies showed even people with significant privacy concerns could be persuaded to adopt electronic health records. But only if they were highly involved in evaluating the detailed benefits and risks. They needed to truly elaborate on the message for it to stick.
That sounds like a lot of work. What about the other path, the peripheral route? That sounds, easier.
It definitely is easier. The peripheral route is used when you have little interest, or maybe just little time or ability, to process a message deeply.
Okay.
Here, persuasion stems more from your association with positive or negative cues in the message, or maybe just making a quick inference about the position being advocated.
Cues. What kind of cues?
Well, these cues are usually unrelated to the message's logical quality. They might include things like the speaker's attractiveness, their perceived credibility, maybe someone wearing a lab coat.
Right, the symbol of authority.
Exactly. Or even just the shiny production quality of an ad. You're essentially acting as a mental shortcut artist.
Haha, I like that.
You're quickly judging things without deep thought, relying on mental shortcuts, or heuristics as psychologists call them. They're basically rules of thumb.
So like that impulse buy because the packaging looked cool, or trusting a TikTok influencer because they're popular, not because I've actually checked their facts.
Precisely. Think about the COVID-19 pandemic. Authorities often used peripheral tactics, simple, catchy slogans, celebrity endorsements, to encourage behavior changes, especially targeting those who weren't motivated to dive into the complex science.
Okay.
And research actually found that anti-vaccine messages on Twitter tended to rely much more heavily on these kinds of peripheral cues, appealing to emotion or simplicity rather than detailed evidence.
So it's like our brain just says, look, I don't have time for a full investigation. Just give me the quick version.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which raises a really important question then. What determines which route you take when you're presented with information? How does the brain choose?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the two most influential factors are your motivation and your ability to process the message.
Motivation and ability.
Your motivation is simply your desire, your willingness to think about the message, and it's heavily influenced by how personally relevant it feels to you.
Right. Does this affect me directly?
Exactly. Yeah. For instance, there was a study with undergraduate students. Those told a new exam policy would take effect next month were far more motivated to think deeply about the arguments than those told it was a distant future concern. And, some people just naturally enjoy thinking more than others. They have what's called a higher need for cognition. They like the central route.
Okay, so motivation is about wanting to think. What about ability?
Ability is about, think about it. Do you have the necessary cognitive resources?
Like the brain power available.
Right. That means having adequate time, being free from distractions like a noisy environment or trying to multitask.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, most of us are. And it also means having enough background knowledge to actually understand the arguments being made. Imagine trying to understand a really complex financial report while you're also cooking dinner and maybe listening to a podcast. Your ability is low.
Definitely low.
Which pushes you toward peripheral processing. You'll rely on cues like, does this advisor seem confident, rather than analyzing the fund's performance data. Oh, and while a little bit of repetition can actually help us scrutinize arguments.
Like seeing an ad a few times.
Yeah, it gives you more chances to process. But too much repetition can just become tedious and make us tune out entirely. We hit overload.
So if I'm distracted, or maybe just tired, I'm basically a sitting duck for peripheral persuasion. Is that fair?
That's a pretty fair assessment, yes.
Yeah.
Your defenses are down, so to speak.
How does this whole ELM framework, these two routes, play out in the constant, barrage of messages we encounter every single day? Online, offline, everywhere.
You are spot on. We see these routes in action absolutely everywhere, often without even realizing it.
Like in advertising?
Advertising is a classic example. There's a well-known study on a new disposable razor. When consumers had low involvement, meaning they didn't really care much about razors, it wasn't important to them.
Okay.
Ads featuring popular athletes, which is a peripheral cue, right? Celebrity endorsement. Those were more effective.
Makes sense.
But when consumer involvement was high, maybe they were looking for a really good shave. Only the strength of the product's arguments mattered.
So the features, the benefits.
Exactly. Like how many blades it had, how smooth it shaved. The central route took over because motivation was high.
And social media. That feels like prime peripheral territory.
It often is. Algorithms constantly curate your feed based on what you've clicked on before, pushing content that might trigger a peripheral response through, say, strong emotional appeal or really easy-to-digest formats.
Those viral videos that make you feel something strongly, but you couldn't quite explain why if someone asked.
Precisely that. But it's not always peripheral. Companies using social media ads can also engage you in more systematic central processing. If their content is highly interactive and genuinely informative, that can lead to stronger, more centrally processed attitudes. Even on platforms like YouTube, research indicates videos using simpler language, more function words, tend to get more engagement appealing to that peripheral route, while more complex, content-rich videos require more central processing.
So it's this constant dance, isn't it, between appealing to our thoughtful side and our shortcut-seeking side?
It really is a constant dance.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, I think. If the ELM gives us the sort of blueprint of how our brains process information, choosing the fast lane or the slow lane, then Robert Cialdini offers a set of incredibly practical, universal tools, or maybe principles, that persuaders consciously or unconsciously use, especially when our minds are in that peripheral shortcut-seeking mode, right? Needing quick decisions because we're just overloaded with information.
That's a perfect way to frame it. He identified 6 core principles that people often rely on when making those snap judgments.
And they work because they tap into our automatic responses.
Indeed. They leverage our automatic response mechanisms, these mental shortcuts we've developed, making them incredibly powerful.
Okay, let's break them down. What's the first one?
First up is reciprocity. People feel this deep, almost primal need to give back when someone has provided something to them first.
Like owing someone a favor.
Exactly. The key for a persuader here is often to go first and go positive, give something of value. Think about the world's greatest car salesman, Joe Girard. He famously sent all his former customers holiday cards every year that simply said, "I like you."
That's it. Just, I like you.
That was it. No sales pitch. Just a small, positive gesture. It built immense loyalty through reciprocity. So if someone offers you a small gift, a free sample, even just helpful information, your brain is already subtly leaning towards reciprocating in some way.
Okay, reciprocity. Got it. What's next?
Next is consistency. Once we've made a choice or taken a stand, even a small one, we experience both personal and social pressure to behave consistently with that commitment.
We don't want to seem flaky or contradict ourselves.
Precisely. So it's easier to get you to comply with a request if you see it as consistent with something you've already said or done. Even a small initial yes makes a bigger yes later more likely. This principle is also partly why we tend to value things more if we've had to put effort into them. You sometimes hear it called the IKEA effect.
Oh, I can definitely relate to the IKEA effect. I am way prouder of those slightly wobbly shelves I built myself than anything I just bought off the rack.
Exactly. Your effort, your commitment, changes your perception of its value.
It feels like my commitment makes me like it more. Okay, so consistency. What about social proof? That feels like it's absolutely everywhere, especially online.
Oh, absolutely. So social proof is huge. We inherently use the actions of others to decide on the proper behavior for ourselves, especially when we're uncertain.
Like if everyone else is doing it, it must be okay. Or good.
That's the mental shortcut. Think about why TV shows still sometimes use laugh tracks. It's a subtle cue telling you, this is funny, you should laugh now. On social media, seeing how many likes, shares, or positive comments something has tells your brain, wow, this is popular, so it must be good or true. It's why testimonials and most popular labels on websites are so effective.
So we look to the crowd.
We do. And sometimes that's helpful, but it can also be dangerous. In an emergency, people often look around to see how others are reacting. If everyone is just looking around, waiting for someone else to act, well, nothing happens. It's called bystander apathy.
Right. Okay, social proof. Then there's liking. I assume that means exactly what it sounds like. We're more easily influenced by people we like.
Precisely. We are far more easily persuaded by those we like. It's pretty straightforward, but very powerful. This is partly why things like Tupperware parties were historically so effective. It wasn't necessarily about the plastic containers.
It was about buying from your friend, right? You don't want to say no to them.
Exactly. It's about the relationship, building rapport by finding common interests, maybe offering genuine compliments, or even just seeming similar to us. These things significantly increase persuasiveness. It's why good salespeople often try to find common ground with you before they even start their pitch. Oh, you like golf too?
Yeah, build that connection first. Okay, number 5.
Number 5 is authority. We have a very strong tendency to be persuaded by figures who demonstrate knowledge, confidence, and credibility, or even just the symbols of authority.
Like the lab coat example again.
Exactly. Or why speakers often begin by listing their qualifications, or why certain professions wear uniforms, police officers, doctors. These are overt signs of authority designed to trigger our deference. We're generally wired to trust perceived experts.
But that trust can be misplaced, right?
It absolutely can.
Yeah.
Blind trust in authority can be risky. There have been simulator studies, for instance, where even experienced co-pilots sometimes failed to intervene when the pilot intentionally tried to crash the plane simply because of the immense power of the pilot's perceived authority in that context.
Wow. That's a really sobering thought. It just highlights the sheer power of perceived authority, even when it might be totally misguided.
It does.
Okay, and finally, number 6 is scarcity. This one feels pretty obvious. We want what we can't have or what's rare. But how does it play out beyond just, limited edition sneakers?
Scarcity is incredibly potent because, as you said, we tend to want items, opportunities, or even information that we believe are in short supply or high demand. If something is presented as rare or limited or going fast, we're much more likely to desire it. Amazon uses this constantly with messages like, only 2 left in stock.
Yeah, it makes you feel you need to act now.
Right. It triggers a sense of urgency, playing directly on our fear of missing out FOMO. But it's not just about physical items. It can be limited time offers for services, exclusive access to information, or even the idea that this opportunity won't last long. Our brains register a potential loss, and loss aversion is a powerful motivator, often stronger than the appeal of a potential gain.
So, these 6 principles, reciprocity, consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity, they aren't just, abstract academic concepts, they are actively shaping your experiences every single day.
Constantly.
Whether you're browsing online, listening to a political speech, or even making personal health decisions. You mentioned marketers using consensus.
Right, that's a form of social proof. When they state a service is the fastest growing or most popular, they're influencing your perception by suggesting everyone else is doing it, so maybe you should too. It leverages that social proof principle.
And this brings up something interesting you touched on, self-persuasion, how our own minds influence us.
Yes, that's a fascinating area. Research has found that truly compelling, persuasive messages often aren't just about the external argument. They connect an idea directly to you, to your values, your identity. Emotional self-reflection, thinking about how something aligns with who you are, often leads to more significant and lasting opinion changes than just logically analyzing external evidence.
So internal consistency matters a lot.
It does. Yeah. And interestingly, you can even influence your own beliefs simply by pretending to convince someone else of something.
Really? How does that work?
Well, the very process of generating arguments to persuade them makes you articulate and rehearse those arguments. You end up building a stronger case for yourself in the process. It's like your brain is listening to its own sales pitch and buying it.
Okay, my mind is slightly blown. But with all this talk of influence, routes, principles, subtle tactics, it raises a really crucial question for you, the listener. When does persuasion cross the line into unethical manipulation? How can we tell the difference between genuine influence and, well, deceit?
This is such a vital distinction, especially today with the sheer volume of information and misinformation we face. Ethical persuasion, as scholars like Anderson define it, should be a communication activity that unites people. Importantly, it permits maximal individual choice.
Maximum individual choice, okay.
It respects your autonomy, your ability to make voluntary, informed decisions. Manipulation, on the other hand, relies on deceptive tactics. It undermines that choice, it hides information, it plays unfairly.
And that's why we need some kind of ethical framework.
Precisely. Which brings us to something called the Terrace test. It's a really useful framework for evaluating the ethics of any persuasive communication. And it's a tool not just for communicators, but for you as a consumer of information.
TARES. That's an acronym, right? T-A-R-E-S. What do the letters stand for? Let's break them down.
Okay. First up is T for truthfulness.
Yeah.
Truthfulness of the message.
Okay, so just don't lie.
It's more than just not telling literal lies. It demands that the persuader's intention is not to deceive. It requires providing substantially complete information, the information that you legitimately need to make a good decision about your life. Deception, even if it's just by omission or creating a false impression, is seen as unethical because it distorts your reality and takes away your power to choose freely based on facts.
Can you give an example of that, where it's not a direct lie but still fails the truthfulness test?
Sure. Think about that old advertisement for profile bread. It heavily implied it had fewer calories.
Right, I think I remember that.
But in reality, it had the same calories per ounce as other breads. It was just sliced thinner. So a slice had fewer calories, but the bread itself wasn't lighter. Technically not a lie, perhaps, but certainly not truthful in its overall impression or intent. It was designed to mislead.
Gotcha. So it's about the spirit of the information, not just the letter. It has to be genuinely transparent and not lead you astray.
Exactly. It respects your right to make a truly informed choice.
Okay, T is truthfulness. What's A?
A is for authenticity. Authenticity of the persuader.
So is the person being genuine?
Yes, essentially. This principle centers on the persuader's integrity and sincerity. Do they genuinely believe in the product, service, or cause they're promoting? Is this something they would wholeheartedly recommend to people they actually know and love? It also asks persuaders to examine and balance potentially conflicting loyalties. For example, their obligation to an employer versus their commitment to truth and the well-being of you, the persuadee. It's about sincerity and integrity in action. Can they stand behind their message?
Okay, T for truthfulness, A for authenticity.
R stands for respect. Respect for the persuadee. This is often considered the real heart of the TARES test.
Respect. How does that apply specifically to persuasion?
It demands that persuaders regard other human beings as worthy of dignity. It means ensuring they don't violate your rights or interests just for their own narrow gain. Persuasive appeals, ethically, should be made to your decency and your higher inclinations, not designed to exploit fears or pander to your lower or baser inclinations.
So not using fear-mongering or prejudice as a tool.
Exactly. For instance, if you're encouraging someone to seek mental health care, an ethical approach involves providing consistent information and practical support, but always respecting their autonomy and their capacity for rational choice, even if you disagree with their decision. It's about empowering them, not exploiting their vulnerability.
Right. Respecting your agency. Okay. T-A-R-E.
E is for equity. Equity of the persuasive appeal itself,
Equity.
meaning fairness.
Yes. Fairness and balance. This focuses on the persuasive appeal itself. Is there reasonable parity or equality in information, understanding, insight, and experience between the persuader and you, the persuadee?
So is it a level playing field?
That's the question. If there are significant disparities, like if the persuader has vastly more knowledge or power, are accommodations made to level that playing field? Think about advertising aimed at young children who lack the cognitive ability to critically evaluate claims. Ethical persuasion avoids unfairly targeting or exploiting such vulnerable audiences.
So it's about not taking advantage of someone's lack of knowledge or vulnerability. Precisely. The golden rule, treating others as you would want to be treated if you were in their position, is a pretty good measure here. It asks, is this a fair exchange, or am I being taken advantage of?
Okay, that makes sense. Truthfulness, authenticity, respect, equity. And the last one, S.
S stands for social responsibility. Responsibility for the common good.
Thinking bigger picture now.
Exactly. This principle calls on persuaders to be sensitive to the wider public interest, to ask, will the product, cause, or idea being promoted potentially cause harm to individuals or to society as a whole? It means actively considering the downstream consequences and contributing, or at least not detracting from, the overall health and well-being of society. It means not promoting things known to be harmful, even if legal. This principle also addresses what some call moral myopia, where individual persuasive acts might seem ethical in isolation, but the broader cultural system or industry practices of persuasion might actually be causing harm.
It's about looking at the ripple effect. Wow. Okay, so the Terrace test, truthfulness, authenticity, respect, equity, social responsibility. That's actually a really powerful framework.
It is, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the Terrace test isn't just for PR professionals or advertisers. It's a powerful tool for you to critically evaluate the constant deluge of persuasive messages you encounter every single day.
Like a personal ethics filter.
Exactly. It encourages you to stop and think about the true intentions behind a message, the potential impacts of those trying to influence your choices for what you buy, to what you believe about your health, your finances, or the world around you. It's like your internal BS detector, giving you specific criteria to check against.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've navigated this complex landscape of persuasion, from the underlying psychological routes your brain takes, that central and peripheral processing, to the powerful, almost universal tactics Cialdini identified that are used to influence you.
Reciprocity, consistency, all those.
Right. And finally, landing on these essential ethical considerations using the Terrace test that should really guide all communication. You, the listener, now have a much clearer framework, hopefully, to understand how your mind is influenced daily.
Which really raises an important final question for you to ponder. How will you use this understanding? Will you simply be more aware, more discerning of the influences swirling around you? Will you be better at spotting those peripheral cues, those Cialdini principles in action? Or maybe will you take it a step further? Will you apply these principles to communicate more ethically and effectively in your own life? Always striving for messages that meet that Terrace test. Truthful, authentic, respectful, equitable, and socially responsible. Because remember, the aim isn't just to be persuaded less, perhaps, but to engage with information more critically, more thoughtfully.
Absolutely. Whether you're making a big life decision or just choosing what website to click on next, remember the pervasive power of persuasion all around you. And, maybe more importantly, remember the power of your informed choice.
We really hope this deep dive helps you navigate those daily currents of influence with, well, greater clarity and a stronger sense of purpose. Until next time, keep digging deeper.